Can we call to order the March 4th Foster-Glocester School Committee meeting?
Yes. Ms. Cook?
Here.
Ms. Joyce here. Mr. Morrow? Mr. Epstein? Ms. Keeling? Mr. Joyce? Ms. Pezza? Ms. Ferrera? Mr. Russo?
Here.
Can you say that for me?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. No recognition book? What is it?
Yeah.
The one and the J, and after that I got lost.
Approval of meeting minutes for February 4th, 2025.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the minutes of the open meeting on February 4th, 2025.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the minutes of the executive session meeting on February 4th, 2025.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I make a motion to approve the monthly bills dated February 1st, 2025 to February 28th, 2025 in the amount of $1,056,935.16.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of cell tower funds.
Second.
Ask a question, please. Is that an accurate number?
It said $75 for the whitewater rafting, and then it was just $10 extra for the transportation or whatever. That's awesome. Good. Okay. Thank you for doing all that work for the transportation.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great.
Thank you for doing that for the kids.
CTE program update, is it on tonight? Table?
Yeah, taking that to next month.
Okay. Finance update?
Mine will be quick. We have revenues. We're at 68.15% collected as of February 28th, 2025. And for expenses, we're at 56.61%.
Any discussion? Great, thank you. Capital projects update? Anyone on the subcommittee?
We had a very good meeting last week. We had the date good. It was great. There's a lot of things we need to vote on in the packet. But, good stuff.
Yeah, so the first, and I don't know, we speak to them, or everybody else can.
Say that again?
When I speak to them, like some of them.
Yeah, Gary's here just if you have questions, but your capital projects update really includes those three items A, B, C.
Before you give yours, can I just tell the school people that we in the town system?
Oh.
So should we just start with Brad
Thank you.
Sports?
Should we make a motion and discuss?
So I make a motion to approve the Rad Sports site evaluation and schematic design as presented in the packet.
Second.
Discussion?
If I may, I'm sorry. So I appreciate the capital projects committee going forward and looking and getting the information on this. I think it's really important. However, I think it's premature to spend this almost $100,000 to spend without knowing the towns are going to approve this to put it on the, I mean, the towns are integral in this. If they don't approve to put this on the ballot, we can't do it.
So last meeting we talked about this. The reason we have to get this design done is that we don't know how much to ask for without getting some sort of estimate. So this vendor, they're gonna put together drawings, they're gonna do site evaluation and give us an estimate. But without that, we can't just go to the town
No.
and say we need this. You know what I'm saying?
I totally understand, but it's still $100,000. And if the town's like, I'm already telling you, so Foster's like, no, because they're waiting for our bond to drop off because they need a police station, just like Gloucester. They've been trying to get a police station for years. So I don't want to spend $100,000 if they're not. Even if we say, all right, so we think it might be anywhere between 10 million, but I don't know if they'll approve even a $5 million bond.
No, I'm
You know what I
completely
mean?
with you.
So,
It's just, we're
I
going off of
understand-
last meeting.
No, I know, and
Yeah.
I didn't expect that to be that much money. I'll be honest with you for a drawing, and I understand that. I understand it. I understand that it's prevailing wage, I'm sure, and there's a lot of work that goes into it to test the soil and to do the schematics and everything else. I just want to know if we can table it just to reach out to the towns to see if they'll even. No,
I think as a committee, last month, this is what we decided to move forward with because we need a starting point.
we also talked about talking to the towns too, though. I remember that. We also talked about talking to the towns to making sure.
But we can't go to the towns until we know what it's gonna cost.
Yeah.
That was our.
I know it's just it's $100,000.
But wait a minute. But our issue was, do we go to them and ask for 6 million, 8 million, 10 million? Until they do that work and give us a price, we can't go to the towns. And
Can I just add one piece to that? And I think this is a really important conversation and discussion. Keep in mind what this includes. It includes really your whole site design to know how much it would cost. And then what you can do is you can break it down and say, well, if we were going to go out for bond and that's not an option right now, what can we do? And we would be able to have phases if we want to do parts of it in phases. I think what.
Okay, so they would also do phases. So if we don't get a bond approved,
Yes. So this right now gives us a plan to say what's under the soil, what is it that's out there that we don't even know yet, and what would that look like if we were to redesign? Then we have an opportunity to go to RIDE and say what is reimbursable with housing maybe, and then what do we want to do for phases, and then so it doesn't have to be a one complete project, is my understanding, but we are guessing on so many levels, and what this will do is it's an investment in what a plan would be should we decide to move forward or should we decide to do parts of it. That's my understanding.
I also just want to add that I think it's also, yes, it is $100,000, but we need that base point and that starting point because I also don't want us to end up in a situation like Situate where they built a whole new, synthetic field and everything, and there were holes and everything else underneath. You know what I mean? In the sinkholes, and I don't want that to happen. Again, they probably went through all the proper steps, but I also want to find out what's underneath because if we have pipes that are, leading out and where we might receive sinkholes later on, then obviously we can't do that. So I think that this is the first starting point in order to actually get everything rolling.
So I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
I
Opposed?
I don't know. I'm sorry. I think it's a lot of money. Thank you.
So, soundstage system.
I make a motion to approve the soundstage system quote for the PMS sound system as presented in the packet.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay, State of Rhode Island MOU lighting package.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the fully funded State of Rhode Island MOU lighting project as presented in the packet.
Second.
It's very unusual. They don't usually fund anything. It's usually just a lot of mandates.
Yeah, and Gary, I don't know if you wanted to speak about it, but that's probably about a year and a half of networking and staying on top of ensuring that.
Thank you.
Nothing.
Wow. How much work did you have to put in though for this? Thank you. A lot of footwork. Yeah, it's a lot. Thank
And
you.
I think just for everyone to understand it, and Gary, you know better than I do, but it's to upgrade. If you remember years ago, you had a lighting project, but that actually wasn't completed. So this is to make the buildings, both buildings, energy efficient. So there'll be dimmers and full control.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
We don't have any personnel actions. Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. We do have, yes, congratulations, Samantha Murdoch. If you remember, Sue retired last month. And so, Samantha is replacing, she already started and it's good move forward. With respect to anything else on my superintendent's report, I kept that very brief this month. But just to let you know that we had our PD day in January that I shared the information on, and our next one is March 14th. Again, we have some collaboration between Gloucester and the region. It's our last day that we have focused on right to read, and then going into next year, we don't have these days any longer. So hopefully we can put them back in the calendar for next year, but it'll be again led by Amanda. She's creating the agenda and it's for both schools. Yep. I mean, I can give you a brief summary. The reason I'm having it tabled is because I want to continue to work through which days we can actually include. We have minutes, so I can appeal to the commissioner and ask to put either early release or PD days back in. As I just said, this is the last year that you have the 3 PD days for the right to read, and we certainly need time for our teachers to work. There's just no other time, and the regulations and the expectations are becoming more and more, so it's really an opportunity for that. More importantly, my hope is that when I bring this back to you in April, you'll approve the 2 weeks in December. Christmas Eve falls on December 24th. So what we'd like to do is have Monday and Tuesday off as well. And the Superintendent's Association has a spreadsheet going out so I can see what other districts are doing. And the majority of the districts are doing the Monday and Tuesday off as well. So I'll come back to you in April with the finalized calendar.
Appointments to capital project subcommittee.
Aaron Dupuy and Beth Keeling to the Capital Project Subcommittee.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we have to abstain now. No. Okay.
Policy subcommittee update.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the Pontiac College and Career Program Application Policy as a first reading as presented in the packet.
Comments?
For the policy for this is just mostly language changes and other things, as you can see from all the red. I believe we did, Renee, if you can just quote me, what else did we add? Or I know we took stuff out, like, for example, for the admissions and program continuation criteria, procedures and criteria apply to admissions to all 9th and 10th. We took out the 11th grade portion because most of the time we're not bringing in 11th graders who only have the 1 year left of their high school career. So it's all here in red. And then we've also updated, I believe, with also state law, with what's written within state law has been updated into this packet, into this policy, as well.
Yes. Yes. It was an update to the language, and you'll see a lot of cross out. They're not called college and career pathways, so a lot of crosses just pathway replacement program, and then just updating the language so we're really in line with the current expectations. The appeals process was not one that would be able to be followed, so we tightened up that language. We included some for the criteria for the acceptance, and just as the practices have developed over the last 10 or so years, and we've had an increase in students coming. We've identified the policy wasn't up to date with the practices, so this was an update to the policy because this was written just about 5 years ago.
Very big question. So they no longer call any of them pathways.
They're no longer called pathways. They're CT programs. The pathways.
That's going to be.
Program.
Right.
So in our attempt to update outdated policies, I'm going to be bringing them to you hopefully a month, the policy subcommittee. This is one that I came across, and it's right in line with it. I mean, it's actually all provision of services shared by the region. And there's a yearly review, and you as a committee or the subcommittee identifies which services you're sharing with the elementary schools. So I thought it was important for you to see it. If there are changes that need to be made, we can certainly revisit it. This was created and adopted in 2002. So if you can have a chance to look at it, it's not up for revision, just to bring it to your attention.
I was gonna ask the same thing. It says it, yeah.
I probably wrote it. I've forgotten about it. But it is, I mean, it just so that you know, and this has been, perennial issue, making sure that there's some understanding of what the sharing of the costs are. And I would recommend maybe, another subcommittee, but having some at least meet once or try to see if we want to keep this policy and see how you want to go forward with it. Have both Foster-Glocester people on it, and you get some advice from the business office and from the tenant and from somebody else who's sharing assurance services with. Try to put in writing. This is what we've been trying
That's
to
what
do.
we've been talking about.
But
Yes.
now we found this policy, and this kind of gives you the roadmap of how to do it. So I would recommend that you form a subcommittee at some point.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Beth.
Different policy subcommittee.
You could refer to the policy subcommittee.
Does it have to be a subcommittee? Can it be the entire committee and just have it reviewed once a year? That's kind of my question.
Well, I mean, I think that's probably the future, but to get it started, it might be more practical to have it in a work session.
Okay. Thank you.
So maybe next meeting, appointment. Oh, or if you want to just refer it to the policy subcommittee, just do that.
But wouldn't it make more sense for the budget committee readers because they're looking at salaries and schools and policy? The budget subcommittee should be able to look at that. Or we just make a new, I don't know.
So either way, what it looks like is we're going to have to get together what shared services are, excuse me, and programs because we share programs, and I have a working draft of that. But then the cost associated with each one of them, and the breakdown of the cost is based on two different factors, sharing. So
I think Mark makes a good point.
Yeah.
The budget is probably
Yes,
low.
that's right.
Yeah.
Read my mind, Mark. Thank you.
the budget subcommittee.
Budget subcommittee should review this at the next, I mean, after
No,
budget gets.
yeah.
Yeah. down the line.
Yeah.
Down the
Because
line.
they're the financial, because they're the
This
ones that look
summer.
over the
Yeah,
financials.
after
It makes
that,
more sense.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to convene to executive session to discuss and or vote on the following matters. Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5A, privacy of student records, homeschool, and for Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5A, pending litigation / legal advice.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
And then we'll reconvene. So are we leaving because of the public hearing? I know. I know, but are we gonna leave because everything's set up in here? You want
during executive session, we discussed homeschooling and immigration. And one vote was taken. Communication to and from school committee. Future agenda items.
I do have one thing. Renee, I believe that you sent an email to us about the whole ACLU in terms of the, what was it, our like video conferencing. I remember that email. I didn't know if you heard anything back in order to correct them or if they're just ignoring
No,
for the region.
it was a positive thing. So when the ACLU sends out their Open Meetings Act, they send out what committees do. They listed us in not in the category we should be in. So I just responded and said, just want to let you know we started live stream. I actually called her on the phone. So we had a conversation and she said that was the first draft and it went to committees and councils. But before it goes to the public, she was going to work towards make that change.
Okay.
I haven't heard yet, but I honestly don't know where it goes to look to see if it is. But
Okay.
if,
I was
if
just
she
curious.
doesn't correct it, next year's will be.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure because I remember that was one thing that you sent out to us. So I just wanted to thank you.
Second.
Aye.
25.
Test.
I'd like to call the 2025-2026 public hearing to order, 8 p.m. You want to give us a brief overview of the upcoming budget?
I will start. So the budget process is a months-long process that we start in September, and we create that budget based on the best, most up-to-date information we have. Many of our revenue sources are not guaranteed amounts. We are conservative and sensitive to the environment and funding sources. Ultimately, these are our best estimates. Budget's always a moving target. We worked hard to create a fiscally responsible budget that will meet the needs of the district. Expenses for many goods and services have increased over the past few years, and we worked to reduce where we could and increase what needed to be in order to meet the needs of the students and keep the school operational at the level we've maintained over the years. Overall, we are looking at a 2.89 increase to the local appropriation.
And the only piece I'd add is I would remind you that this is year 3 of a new team, and we are in year 3 of UCOA changes. So if you remember several years ago, when I came to you, there were items that were budgeted in, but not in the appropriate UCOA column. So you will continue to see reallocation of UCOA determined functionality of what people are doing. What that means is you might see a a large decrease somewhere else, but it could be an increase in another place, especially with respect to staffing and personnel. They needed to be aligned to the correct UCOA line.
I also just want to state it for the record that for the percent change for each town, that way it's just on the record itself. Foster looks to be a 2.07% increase. Gloucester is a 3.29% increase, with a total appropriation of equaling out 2.89%. I just wanted to put that out on the record for everyone to hear as well.
Thank you. Yes. Yes.
Do any of you out, Walter? Have you had a chance to look through it? Do you have any questions? No. Yeah, you do? Okay. Do you want to just come to the mic and state your name and the town? Or do you want him to come and write it?
Kevin O'Connor's Gloucester. So one of my questions, going to other budget meetings for the town, there's no estimated actual for the current year in any of the numbers I saw. So I see audited actuals for 2 years ago,
We have FY24 actuals in there, yes.
which is two years ago.
That's last year.
Please look.
That ended on 6/30/2024.
Okay, so the comparisons seem to be against budget, not against actual, when you're talking about the percentages. So I look at the audited results from, again, I thought it was 2 years ago because it didn't seem to be the estimated actuals for this year. So if you look at page 13, the audited actual column, it says 23-24. So that's what year?
So on page 13, the audited actual, it
Middle-
says
the
23.
middle column.
Yep. And then the budget so the budget before is the 23-24.
So that's
24.
the audited actual is school year ending June of 24, is that correct?
Correct.
So my question is, do you have any estimated actuals for what you're actually going to come in at for ending June 25?
I don't think we normally have those in there.
I'm just surprised
Yeah.
because when I go to a town meeting, they do give us, in the budget, they do give us estimated actuals for the year they're in. So the reason why I ask is there's some glaring differences when you go back in history of what the school department spent versus what the audited, or I should say, what you spent versus the budget. So in the past, there was some pretty decent overruns, and I was wondering if you could tell us what the current year looks like. Are you overrunning? Do that?
Yeah. I mean, that's something we can look at adding in the future.
We've never been asked to do that, and I don't know if the previous administration did that. I don't think so, because we took their process and their template. So it is something we can look at moving forward.
It is looked at and information is provided back, I assume, to the school to let them know if you're running over budget during the year and that type
Oh,
of
to
thing?
answer that question, absolutely.
Okay, and is that done on a monthly basis?
The school committee gets a report of where the spending is based on what was budgeted. They get a report monthly.
Okay.
Yes.
And can anybody answer that question then? So how is so far, how are you, obviously you should be under budget, but are you under budget to the right amount based on what's left in the school year? You understand
Yeah,
where I'm
I
going
just-
with
Yeah,
that?
we don't have those.
I just don't know how to answer that question.
So the numbers are provided to the school committee
In categories, yes.
on a monthly basis,
Yes.
and to budget, can anybody answer whether we're running on budget or over budget?
We are on budget. We are not overspending right now. However, I want to be clear and say that there are some line items that we might have budgeted and came in higher than expected. Right?
Okay. The other thing I found confusing on that page, typically, obviously, you're budgeting and you're planning your revenue to meet your expenses. So when I look at the audited actual 23-24, I see revenue coming in at 27 million, let's call it 27.1, 27,089, 170, against expenses, audited actual of 24,684. So it looks like we had revenue well in excess of expenses that year. It looks like it's 24,684.
Yes.
So
Yes,
roughly,
yep, that's
roughly 2.4 million.
Yes, we had a surplus last year.
And how did that money get treated? It wasn't given back to the taxpayers. So I'm asking, so what happens? What happens when there's an overrun on something? So does it go into the finances of the budget, come down for the next year? How does that work?
So the excess goes into the
That becomes
into
from
the fund,
our fund
from
balance.
fund balance. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yet the budget for 24-25 went up from 24.6 to 26.7.
Yes.
Kind of thinks if there was a surplus that maybe we wouldn't have had to have budget as much because you would have had a fund to take money from. No,
So we
if you had a
included.
surplus from the previous year. So even with that surplus, you still had to ask for that much the following year.
Yes, we included 400,000 from the general fund to be held. So one thing that I think needs to be discussed or clarified is we speak about this often, but we talk about these revenues, they're estimates. So the reality is our state aid may come in as what we put in the budget.
The audited actual was
Correct.
what happened.
Yes,
Okay, all right.
but I was just answering your question. For right now, we propose a budget with the money with the estimated revenues that we have. So we estimate that those would be our revenues. If they don't come in where they are, then we would have to use fund balance or surplus money to fill those holes. So we put in, you'll see use of fund balance is 400,000. Our hope is that we don't have to use that if these numbers come in higher than expected or what's expected. If they don't, then we hold that money to be able to use.
So I looked at the comparison a little different than the 3.5% because the last actual, and I understand it's 2 years ago. I'm looking at what you're asking for budget 25-26 at 27.7 against the audited actual of 24,684. It's a pretty substantial increase. Even if you back it's 12%, so it's still a pretty substantial number.
So I can answer that question in that there are increases, and that's a reality with, and we're all feeling the increases in facilities. We are also in year 3 of a 3-year contract with our teachers and our non-certified. We're committed to those salaries. There's a 3% increase for our non-certified and a 2.5% increase. So those salaries have to be there. I mean, I can tell you that I understand the way you look at the comparison that way, but we also have created.
So again, over 2 years, you know, if I look at the salary column, 16,181 versus the audited actual from 2 years ago was 14.7. Pretty substantial number, which is more than 3%. I don't have the calculation. I didn't do the calculation, but pretty. I mean, you did 2.78, which is on the 3% that you're talking about, but that's 16.1 to 15.7. That increase from 23-24 actual to the 24-25 budget is a pretty substantial number.
For salaries?
Yeah, 14.7 to 15.7. So that went up $1 million. This year, you're only looking at bringing it up by about 400.
I was just going to say that. Yeah.
So the step increases have nothing to do with the percent increase. So when they go to step 1, step 2, step 3, they get that increase contractually. And then that 3% increase is additional. So it is going to be more than 3% because sometimes, like, I don't know how it is here, I don't remember, but like for us, of course, it's a significant increase to go from like step 7 to step 8. I think they're higher, it's a significant increase.
Talking about step being like a 10-year type thing. So
For teachers.
For each year you're working.
For all your salary, for your teacher positions, yes.
head counts.
Head counts of teachers?
Yeah, is that in here as far as any head count? What do you list head count increases year over year in the budget?
Are you asking how many are on step 1, how many are on step 2?
No, just head count overall.
Do we show the increase in that?
No.
He just wants to know how many teachers we have employed.
And employees, I mean, across the board. So salaries everywhere. So are the head counts?
So the number, he wants to know the total.
It's a total number.
So the total number is not in here, but the total salary per department is in here. So if you look at the Pontiac High School math department, you'll see the total salary
I
for
saw
all
that.
of the
I
math
saw that.
teachers there. Yes. But it's not broken down by each math teacher or science teacher or, no.
I'm just looking for a head count. I'm not looking for individuals.
So that's not in
salaries.
here. No.
I think that would be helpful as well, knowing if they're, if you're doing this on a flat head count over 2 years, or whether or not there's been a head count
But
increase.
so I would just caution you to understand that if you say you're doing it by a head count, that step makes a difference. So for example, if you have a teacher who's in a 3rd year of teaching, their salary is not the same as someone in the 8th year of teaching,
I understand.
and the step going from 3 to 4 is not the same as 8 to 9. And then on top of that, you put, so it's not a linear connection.
Yeah.
But if a head count is something that the committee would like us to put in the budget moving forward, that's not a problem.
I think it would be helpful to people in the town just to understand if there is an increase in head counts. I'm not saying where the head count was in a step. I don't necessarily need to know that, but whether or not there was. So in the maintenance department, are we up 2 people in the maintenance department? Are we up 2 people in the math department or administration or something along those lines?
Sure.
Would be helpful.
That's something we could, if the committee feels that, we can put that in the budget. Yeah.
Right, thank you.
Walter Steer, Gloucester. To follow up on what that gentleman was saying, are we going to have more FTEs next year than we have this year? I think he was trying to get a total amount of teachers that. Are we going to have more teachers next year? Are we going to hire more? Or
We've kept the budget
It's
with the
gonna be
same
pretty
staff
much
that
the
we
same.
have. Yes.
All right, and looks like you're predicting the state aid's going to go down.
Yes.
Is there a reason for that?
It's the funding formula. I don't know the governor. What we get for the proposed recommendation is less than what we had last year. So
Where is that projection coming from? That,
Nope, so 55, not including the categorical, no, not including the high cost special ed. Nope, and it was, so what we're budgeting is, it's like an $83,000 difference.
Okay.
So that's the only thing I didn't know why, because usually it's not gonna change. So Walt, I just wanted to piggyback, so since you said the governor's budget, I wanted to just bring that up. So I'm sorry to interrupt you.
I know I know we're guessing, because we won't know for a while.
Well, no, 'cause
Until this summer.
The proposed, no, it's right. So the governor's budget, the proposed budget is 55,556,048.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just revised last week, and our thinking was that it's still not finalized.
yeah, so it was the
We did
27th. I said
It
the
just
20.
came out last week.
Yeah.
Thursday.
So we didn't update that, assuming that it could change again.
Okay.
And then,
But we can-
keep in mind that 400,000 is held, right? So if the governors, if we get higher state aid, then we don't touch that 400,000.
Yeah.
But if we get lower, we can't ask for more. So the idea was that was the money in here is what we first got earlier in February, I think it comes out, right? Or January.
Okay.
I think it's
And that was just revised last week.
Sorry, we'll continue.
It does look like we always underestimate our revenues. Because when you get the audited actuals, they're always a lot more than what we projected. So we're covering our backsides and making the taxpayers pay more money.
Well, I think there's a really important component there with the tuition revenue. That is absolutely not a guarantee, and I wouldn't want to assume that we would get more tuition.
Now, I'm talking about mostly state aid.
So we,
This one year, 23, 24, it went up to almost
Mhm.
6,700,000.
Yeah.
That's way out of line with the other years. I don't know why we got so much that year.
so we the last 3 years, what we've done is when the first proposal comes out, that's what we put in the budget. Keep in mind that that's the governor's proposal or suggestion, which then gets voted on in May, perhaps, right? Our budget is done by May. So we go with the original proposal by the governor. That's all. I couldn't do it another way. Right, Mike.
When the subcommittee was working on the budget, the governor came out with his budget, but the state is facing huge deficit. And legislators were saying that's probably not going to stand. So we have to become more conservative in that.
And that's why we have that 400,000 fund balance in there, though. So if it does come in higher, we won't be using that.
We just make the adjustment.
All right, and it looks like Foster and Gloucester students have been going down for the last few years. It looks like we're going down another 25 or 30 students this year projected.
Mhm.
Are we bringing in more out of district kids? Level off the classes, or
So we're careful and cautious that the number of students who graduate out of district students, that we try to fill at least that number to keep that consistent in the budget. And then we always try to add a few more students, but we're not guaranteed for the tuition. So we're not filling what we're losing for Foster and Gloucester, because if those students don't come to us, then
well, I
yeah.
think that's a good,
Okay.
good idea. But it just seems that we always have a surplus in tuition than what we budget, because we always have more kids. And it's, as far as I can remember, or as far back as I was when I was on the committee, it seemed like that was always the case. And I don't know where all this money's spent. I know sometimes you say when you got extra money, I know it'll go into the fund balance at the end of the year.
Mhm.
And it looks like we've got a pretty healthy fund balance now. Is that the 3 million? Is that the?
Yeah, and the goal of that is to have the committee allocate those funds to capital. Keep in mind that our goal is to repair things before we have to replace them. We have some pretty big capital projects coming up. So if we get extra tuition money and it goes into the fund balance, then it goes towards our capital projects, which I think is what the committee would want
And
us to do. With respect to tuition, though, I just want to be cautious on that. I know in you said in your experience in your years, we've had more tuition come in than what was
Yeah, it seems
budgeted.
like every
but-
year. Some years it was quite a bit of money.
Yeah, right. I've seen that as well in the past, but I can just say that that's slowing down. Other districts, if we go into the substantially similar, and we've spoken about this, that could end. In addition to if other districts simply don't pay us or the students can't come here for whatever reason. I just don't want to put all our baskets in tuition.
Yeah, because
It's not guaranteed.
I knew when I got off the committee, the last year or two, we were trying to lower the number of, tuition in kids because we didn't know. At that time, there was a lot of talk about, a lot of districts weren't too happy because we were benefiting, but a lot of the other city schools were having to pay money. So, and they have a lot more representatives than we do. So, do you know the number of out of district students that we're predicting for next year?
I don't know. I want to say close to
300?
no. No. New students coming in?
No, not new, but altogether.
Oh, we have about 230 students from other districts come here, and we will try to stay right around that number.
And that's broken down pretty much each class, each year.
Yes.
We try to keep the same amount.
So the number of students who graduate, we will definitely try to fill that with the number of students who come in, and if we can do extras, because they commit right now and say they're coming. However, they could change their mind in August, right? So they say they're coming, but then if they don't, so we always have a few extra students. However, I'll also say there's another however. It matters on our programs. Matters on how many seats we have and what room we have in our programs.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, because you got the program, you've got extra seats, and
Right.
And if you got people who want to come. You know how much is our health and dental going up this year? I know that's another projection that you got to figure out.
That's another projection.
We usually get
Yeah.
that number the night of the meeting.
Look forward to that, Walt.
Do you have, what are you projecting in the budget?
I think we're projecting 3.5% for health and 2.5% for dental.
Oh, that sounds not too bad. So we probably had a pretty good experience.
Yeah, we did. I mean, our claim activity I think was up, but
And the other thing I wanted to talk to you about was the money we put in for capital projects. We're putting $300,000 this year, and that's not coming from your fund balance. That's coming from the taxpayer, correct?
correct. And that was the amount from last year as well, I believe.
Yes, it was. Now we put $300,000 in last year.
Yes.
Yes.
Now this year, that $300,000, where did it go? Is it going into classes and stuff like that? Other things in the budget? It's not going to capital projects, is it? We put $300,000 in the budget last year for capital projects.
Right.
Now this year we're putting another $300,000 in. If we did it right, we'd have $600,000 because we put $300,000 last year. Now that money is still in this year's budget because it was in the maintenance of effort, but now it must be used for other things instead of capital projects.
Yes.
So, okay. I wanted to make sure before I spoke. So state law requires us to put so much money aside into our capital project because we're an individual entity. We're a private entity. We're not part of the town. So we have a requirement. What is that requirement? It's a certain percentage of our budget. Is it not, Renee?
3%.
3%.
That's for maintenance of the schools. That's not for capital projects.
That capital projects, I thought that comes into play. That's what.
I thought that was for maintenance of the schools.
That, so it's a percentage, so it's part of it's for the percent, so it goes towards so our facilities guys go into, it doesn't like me, Dave, am I too loud? So it's part of, so certain positions, maybe if I sit back here we go. So certain positions can be used towards that requires 3%.
Right.
You can use the capital, you can use our facilities, and then you can use certain departments, but the capital, we have to do the capital reserve, that has to be in the budget, that was a state law that was implemented. I think you were on the
I think we're
committee,
talking two, I was. I
So
think
it's
we're talking
required.
two things though. That was a new law that came in, that you had to spend, because the state was worrying we weren't
People
maintaining our
want,
schools.
exactly.
So
So that's what that line is for, to force
But-
to force schools, so it's required a dollar amount, a percentage. And only so much can be used towards employees, and the other percentage has to be put into a separate department or a separate line item to show that we are investing in our schools.
Because I remember when I was on the committee, Mike had put money in over a certain amount of years, and we had 3% in that. He had 3% of the budget, and he used 3% of the tuition in tuition. We used 3% of that. That's how we were able to do repair the football field, the drainage, put a new field in, the lighting, new tennis courts. We added 2 courts, lights there, bleachers, the water on the north side of the building, that water plant, and we never had to go out to bond. Now we're talking about going out to bond for a lot of stuff, and so I just don't know why that 300,000 that we put in last year doesn't carry over for capital projects this year. I think it gets spent on other things in the budget. So
It becomes-
if you look at it that way, you raised your budget by 500-some thousand, but actually you raised it by 800. Because you got that 300,000 from the capital projects the preceding year.
It becomes part of our capital fund balance, that 300 that went in there last year.
Well, it should,
Yeah.
because you have
Yes,
you
Yep.
should have a restricted account for that.
Yes.
we do, which is exactly what you just shared that was done by Dr. Barnes is what we've continued to do.
So why have we got to put another 300,000 in this year? If we had, you mean after the following, next year when we do a budget, we'll have, what? Oh, I know that. It has to, yeah. I'm just saying, it is spent every year. And now we're putting another 300, but that 300,000 is in your maintenance of effort. It's in the budget, voted on by the taxpayers. How come we're gonna go off for a $20 million bond or something?
Well, there's only so much that 300,000 can cover.
Well,
Why
I
would
realize
we why would we have 600,000 if the 300 has to get spent on capital projects each year? If we spent the 300, we wouldn't have 600 because we spent it on capital
On
improvements.
maintaining
You
our
spent it
buildings.
you spent it last year. But that should still be in this following year. That should still be in your maintenance of effort. But I know you don't understand that.
Yeah,
No, I don't.
So, well, may I ask a question? So was it 300,000? It wasn't increased to 600,000. That $300,000 is a steady item that's carried over from
Yeah,
year
you
to
put
year.
that
We're
in
not
every
increasing
year.
it.
But if
no,
you
it's
keep,
staying the
But it
same.
has to
We
be
didn't
there, Walt,
increase it.
because
We did
that's a
not increase it.
requirement.
I know you didn't increase it. It's just, I was wondering where that 300,000, I know you spent it last year, but it's still in your budget. So
Yeah,
this
but-
year,
so
you,
when we
that
put
budget,
5 million in for salaries every year, it doesn't become 10 million in the salary next year because we paid the salaries.
You-
It's just a maintenance. Do you know what I'm saying? We put
you put the same amount of salaries in plus the raises. So that
Right.
money stays in from year to year.
right. That's what
Just
we're
like
doing
this
for this.
300,000 for
That's
capital
exactly what
projects
this
should
is.
stay in
Instead
the
of 5
capital
million
project line item.
Instead of
not
5
go
million
somewhere
paying
else.
for the salary, it's 300 paying for the maintenance of the buildings. It's the same thing. We're not increasing it by 300,000.
Yeah, you're putting well, you're not increasing it because you didn't,
Right.
you're using the last year's for something else. This
No, can I
spent-
just clarify the audited we spent 253,838 on capital projects.
last year, that's all.
That's what the audited amount shows.
So less 47,000. So it's not like we pocketed a lot of expenditures that went back to state capital.
And how much reimbursement did we get on that money?
Or is that what we spent? So you add 50% to it.
So that could be another way to look at it.
So
I think the
if we
reimbursement's
spend
included.
We could have spent 500 exactly.
And and got 200,000 reimbursed and
Yeah.
spent the 300,000.
Well, it just seems to me like over all the years we've been doing this, we should have a pocket of money in capital projects.
Only if we were letting our buildings fail.
Nobody's letting the buildings
That's
fail.
because we're spending the money on repairing them.
On what?
Because we're spending that money to repair them as things come up. Did you want to add to his? Maybe you could clarify it.
That dark hole?
That's right, and that wasn't reimbursable. That was part of the. That's right, because that was the other part of the ESSER grant. So that was a
That
full.
wasn't
No,
reimbursed.
that was a full expenditure. Yes, thank you, Gary.
All right, well, I guess I'm not gonna convince you. So,
I just,
I
may,
just-
can
I don't
you and
think
I
you
maybe have a
understand what
phone
I'm
call?
saying.
So yeah, so what might be easier is if we sit down, Walt, if it's possible, we can have a phone call because I want to be sure that I understand your question, answer it, and then if there's what the clarification is, and maybe we can even use the
it
audit
just
would be
seems
helpful.
like we put 300,000 like we did last year and this year. You do that 5 years in a row. If that money stays in capital projects, you should have $1.5 million.
Only if you budget 300 more
We do.
You do budget 300,000.
in addition, so that would be 600,000.
I have no problem. That's what the capital projects money is for, is to spend on capital projects. Oh,
He's not questioning how we're spending it.
No.
He's wondering why we're putting 300,000 in, and I'm trying to say that
it was spent, but it's still in. It's part of your maintenance. It's in the budget that was approved by the taxpayers. So that 300,000 is in this future budget. It's part of it because we start off with a base and then we increase it to like 2.89% this year. But that you didn't take that 300,000 from last year's budget out before you calculated this one. Yeah, you spent it, but you spend all the money in your budget every year, right?
so the maintenance of effort that's true for all of the line items then.
Correct.
So all of our line items that we carry over to the following year did not increase by what it originally was. It just stayed
No, well,
the
each-
same.
Capital projects is a little different.
How is it
than a-
different
than
when
a
it comes
regular
to budgeting though?
You know, when you start your budget, you start with the base of what you had the year before, probably, unless you've got some big changes,
Right.
and then you go forward.
Right.
And that capital project should carry forward into the following
Unless it
year.
was right.
Unless we spent it.
Yeah, but you spent your whole budget last year.
Right.
But you still carry that whole budget, and that's your base,
Exactly.
and then you add on to that.
We're not adding on to that into that category. We're not adding an additional 300. We're maintaining the amount that the budget item stayed the same. You know how we used to put in parentheses if there was an increase or a decrease on the side?
Yeah.
If there were in parentheses, it was a decrease.
No,
It's not an increase.
I don't think you're understanding what I'm saying.
You have all 9 of us confused. You think it should be a zero line? A zero?
Well, you could do it that way. You've got plenty of fund balance. You could fund your capital projects. But I think the best way is, I thought when I was on the committee, we had built up 3% of the budget so you had that every year. So you didn't have a separate line item.
Yeah, it has to be a line item.
Well, they passed a new law when you had to have that 3%. And I know you can subtract Gary's salary and everybody else that belong into that count towards that maintaining your school.
But you can only use so much salary line, and then the 3%. And you're right. We used to self-fund it and create our own 3%. We used to
Yeah.
but then we couldn't do it that way anymore, and we had to show it in a separate line item. Or
Well, I
because it
think-
became.
That's true.
And that's what happened. That's what that is from. So we gradually got to the 3, and now we're maintaining it, right? And we're showing it.
Yeah, it's not the way I remember it, but I'm getting old.
I know. It's
Well, okay, I guess that's all I got. You guys can go home.
Any other questions?
Why are you saying that?
KJ.
Yeah, the 2.89 is the appropriation.
So that's the appropriation, but the 3.5 that affects our base effort because that's our budget. So even though that's a local appropriation, I understand a local appropriation is 2.89%, but our maintenance of effort, so like taxpayers saying, nope, we're going to budget you, it's based on the budget, and that's what the budget would be, 3.5%. So say next year they say, nope, I'm giving you 0, I'm not giving you an increase. Then it's technically that number, not the 2.89%. It's technically the additional point, like 0.6%. So I mean, and I don't know if we should budget appropriately of what the state funding is. Just I don't know if that'll change the number much since we know it's since they gave it, unless you're still apprehensive. Like I understand the budget subcommittee. I know you put a lot of work into this, and I understand. I know it's so hard to guess what the numbers won't be. So
You're just saying correct the number that was just released last week.
yeah, and I just hope it was not.
Right, but only 2.89 is impacting the taxpayer. The remaining is being.
That's been true every year.
No, I know, and you're right. And other times I'm like, I wish I noticed that, and I didn't. So this is.
But years before me, I just want to
No,
clarify
100%.
that.
I'm
We've
not
been
saying
on
to you
this
guys,
committee
I am
for
not.
16 years together. It's been done 16 years.
Yeah.
together.
It's a local appropriations is the way it was presented. So we've always.
Wait, so Shar, are you like just because I'm trying to understand? Are you concerned that we're underfunding what we're requesting?
No, it's not. I just, it's misleading. That's all I was saying. And I'm not saying it's in a bad way because this is how it's been done because we're using the fund balance of 400,000. I'm just saying that's the real 0 is the 3.5.
But we're not using it on stuff that needs maintenance of effort, like
Yes.
that will need to be repeated, like reoccurring costs.
Yeah,
And our budget that is a reoccurring cost that we're gonna need to make sure we maintain is at 2.89. So that's why. We still can make it on 2.89 because that's our reoccurring cost.
Yeah, so how are we making up that gap then?
So
If it takes 3.5 to maintain our budget year after year after year, and we're only asking the taxpayers for 3.89.
No, it's 2.89.
Or 2.89 year after year after year, who's making up the difference of?
Yes.
Thank you.
Are we
That's
pulling
all she's
that?
asking. Or is that
Or is it the 400,000
That's
from
the-
fund balance?
the fund
the
balance.
difference of the fund
Yeah.
balance?
Yes.
So Shelley, the 2.89 is the 565,000. 400,000 in fund balance makes up that.
Okay.
It's a fund balance.
So
And
it's
if we
always-
revise the state aid number, we would just reduce the
Just
fund
reduce.
balance.
So the
right?
presentation, I just want to clarify, the presentation from the way I was told to do the budget and Dr. Barnes before me, was the local appropriations was the budget that was presented because that's the impact of the taxpayers. So I just don't want anyone to think that we're misleading anything. And I know you said it wasn't me, but I don't want that to be out there that it's misleading. We're presenting a 2.89% increase to our budget. Okay.
I didn't notice it before. But
Okay.
I don't think this page was in our packet last
It all was.
Yeah. Shelley, it was.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the
All of
other
it was.
ones.
Yep.
Last year's was 4.45. The year before that was 3 or 2.5%. The year before that was 4.0%. That was the fiscal year of 2023 was 4.0%. 24 for last year's for fiscal year 24 was 2.46%. That was that budgetary number, page number 8.
And what was the increase for the overall?
But last year's budget was over 4.5%.
But the taxpayers.
4.45%, but the overall for the taxpayers was 2.76%.
Where did that 2% come from? Because we only took 150,000 from surplus last year, we need to use.
So it came in, our state aid came in higher at the end.
Higher.
Yep. So that's why at the beginning when Ann said it's a moving target. Our revenue sources are not guaranteed. We do the best estimate we can with the information we have at the time. Remember, we start preparing this budget in December. I have to have my first presentation to you in January. The governor's proposal comes out in January. So we start to build this budget then. Now the governor just gave we just got from RIDE more updated information, but we didn't change this yet because that could change again for the vote in May.
And then, like you said, you just take, so you just tell
So we won't,
taxpayers,
yes.
we're gonna use less.
If it goes up, we take it out of fund balance. If it goes down, we put it back into fund balance.
But if I don't put
That's
a,
your cushion.
right, if I don't put a fund balance in there and we're estimating higher than what it comes in, then we don't have that. And that's not a place that I was advised by all of you to be in. And I don't think that's fiscally responsible. Mhm.
That's because this one gets you all.
Still in the budget. It shouldn't be in order to create that zero for next year, 26. 27.
I don't know.
So do you know how the maintenance of record? So if the taxpayer says, nope, I'm funding you zero, we're not going to give you an increase.
Okay.
We're going to give you a zero. So is that maintenance of effort, like Walt was talking about? Is that including the 400,000 that we may or may not use? Is that built into the budget? Does that make sense that way?
I don't know that I
That's based on our expense.
so our expenses are our expenses. They are what we project them to be.
That's what I'm saying.
Our
So
revenue
we don't-
sources are projected and estimated, but we're not entirely sure. So if our revenue sources come in higher, say we get more students for tuition, or our state aid comes in higher, then we would not use that 400,000. But our expenses are our expenses as best that we can predict them now.
So the local appropriations for $400,000 is not in the local appropriations anyway. So it should
No.
not affect our maintenance of effort for the taxpayers of what their dollar amount responsibility would be next year. So that's what I
think that's
told somebody. I wanted to make
Yes.
sure I'm correct.
I think that's correct.
But that's what I told somebody, so I wanted to make sure I was correct.
It sounds
It
correct
sounds
in the way
correct.
you're saying
Alright.
it to me,
All right.
and it's the way we've operated over. Again, this is my third budget. It's the way we've operated where we have not used fund balance, and it stayed in our fund balance. And
Because
it
the
didn't
local
impact.
appropriations is what we ask the taxpayers.
Correct.
So next year, if they say, no, we're not giving you a penny more, then they're basing that number off the local appropriations, which
Correct.
is not including $400,000 surplus, so it is the fund balance.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I told, that's what I told people. I wanted to make sure I was correct, and that makes sense. Okay. Yeah, I want to get out there so they watch it too. We have it.
I just got one more question. I see we'll have a big increase in our fuel oil for next year. Is that based on this year's usage or increased prices or both? Well, that didn't work last year.
Yeah, I think we're part of the year.
Yeah, it did work, it went down in the middle of last year.
Did it work last year again?
Not at all, the entire year?
Didn't the middle school work? It's also been a lot colder this year. I can tell you.
And I think last year we also had a warmer winter as well. I don't
We
think
had a mild. Well,
it was a
I'm using
mild.
a lot more oil in my greenhouse this year than I did last year. So I can tell you
Yeah.
firsthand that it's costing a lot more money.
Because I know you did get a real good price for your fuel oil this year.
Yeah, the
Which
price is
you're
very
not gonna get
competitive.
next year.
Yeah,
probably.
Yeah,
we're,
yeah.
we're locked in
Are
to
you
the
using
price.
a lot more gallonage than you had budgeted?
When I looked at the numbers today, I didn't look at gallons, but we are on target. I think for fuel oil for high school, that number that's probably where we're gonna we'll come in a little lower than that this year. So that's
On your
why,
budgeted number?
yeah, I believe so.
And why are we raising it so much?
No, we're not on the budgeted number. We might be over what we budgeted because we only had budgeted the 220. We raised it to the 350. So we had looked at
That's a big
24
that's
actuals.
That's a big raise.
yeah.
If you're not, it doesn't seem like you're going over budget yet.
Middle school. Actually, it's 95,000 if we budgeted 53.
Yeah, I think we're going to be over budget from what we budgeted for this year, but our numbers for next year we should be on target based on.
The percentage
usage
rate,
we're
it
looking at
seems
this year.
between the middle school and the high school, you're going up almost 200,000.
Right, but if you look at the FY24 actuals for those, I think we were under budget for this year.
We are. If you look at the actual
Yeah.
that we spent last year, we were significantly under budget.
So, all right, so I see what you're saying. So if you're under budget, which means like, so say it's 300, we budgeted 300,000, it's costing 200,000. Is that what you mean by under budget? We have,
No, I think they're talking, they're going to go over what they budgeted.
We
For this year, we're gonna go over.
We budgeted 224,000.
But based on what we're using this year, I think the numbers, we're looking good for the 26 numbers.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
So they FY25
Yeah.
budget.
Because I know
Because we
you'll probably
increased
be
it.
paying more per gallon next year too, so.
Yeah.
You got a real good deal this year.
Yeah, we did.
You did a good job on that.
Any other questions? Any other comments? So let's make a motion.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to adopt the fiscal year 2025-2026 proposed budget as presented.
Do I have a second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thanks, guys.